Growing up in the central United States, I've heard all the myths and legends about skinwalkers. I never really gave them any merit, up until last week. I've heard that talking or thinking about them can draw them, but I need to tell someone, anyone who will listen and not think I'm crazy. Let me start with some background. My name is Dakota, I'm 26, and I have grown up in and around the Southern Rockies and all the vast wilderness that is Colorado, Utah, and Arizona. All my life I have been drawn to the outdoors. Hiking, climbing, biking, you name it, and I've done it. I'm very experienced in these activities, and I have worked as a guide and survival instructor since the age of 19. But I'm rambling, and these stories are for different times. Anyways, last Friday, I took some time off for myself, just to get back in tune with the solitude of nature. I packed all my gear, finished going through my checklist, and made sure to let some others know where I was going. I then loaded up my gear into my four-wheeler, made sure Bear, my very large, very loyal, and very protective German Shepherd, was comfy in the passenger seat. He's my lookout, my adventure partner, and most of all, my best friend. We set out shortly after 11 a.m. towards a canyon I'd recently discovered hidden away. After about 5 hours of driving through the dusty and desolate landscape, we had finally arrived. After getting the four-wheeler stashed away, I donned my pack and my sidearm, a large caliber Desert Eagle. There aren't many large animals out here, and I like guns and target shooting, so who cares if it's overkill? It's the last means of protection, and it'll do the job. I surveyed the area. There is thick brush and dry foliage all around us, with a small foot trail I cleared for the four-wheeler at our rear, and a large rock pile in front of us with sheer cliffs on either side. I skirted around the rocks to a very narrow passage in behind on the left side. It was a tight squeeze, and I had to remove my pack and pull it behind me. I had to side shuffle like this for around 20 feet with cold jagged rocks against my chest and loose boulders against my back. The trail narrowed near the end, and I had to suck in my chest and wiggle my way out into a large opening in the rocks, where Bear waited happily for me with his head cocked to the side, with a little confused look on his face, almost wondering why I was struggling so much when he passed so easily. When I finally freed myself from the narrow crevice, I looked around, and my jaw dropped. All around me, the cliff walls were covered in ancient cave paintings and carvings, some of which I recognized from other Native American sites, but many of these symbols were new to me. The most notable was a large painting near where the trail continued. It depicted a large figure whose head and antlers resembled that of a deer, but the body was long and narrow, and strangest of all, it stood on 2 feet. It's at times like these, I wish I had brought my camera or even my iPhone. Intrigued, I left the opening and headed on down the trail. I was surprised by how steep and descended with caution until I came upon the opening of a cave. Cave I hadn't known about? Things couldn't get better, I thought. I'd set down my pack and pulled out my flashlight. It was getting pretty dark, so I figured I'd check it out the opening and then get settled in for the rest of the night. I wandered in a few feet and abruptly stopped when the floor dropped off completely. My flashlight barely penetrated the dark abyss below me. I figured it would be better to come back in the daylight, so I headed back towards the mouth of the cave. Bear, who had strangely stayed put, not followed me in. He must be tired, I thought, as suddenly I started to realize my own fatigue after the long day. I started off a small fire with some kindling and ate my dinner along with feeding Bear. After a not quite so satisfying meal, I unrolled my sleeping bag and got comfortable with the fire by my side and the distant view of stars peeking between the distant cliff tops that sheltered me from the rest of the world. With that peaceful thought, I dozed off to the sound of the crackling fire and Bear snoring beside me. I sleepily checked my watch when I was nudged awake. It was almost 3 in the morning. I softly pushed Bear's head away off me so I could get back to sleep. But that's when, in the dim firelight, I saw his teeth bared and his head low beside me in a very protective position. He was staring towards the mouth of the cave, with a deep growl emanating from his throat. More alert now, I clumsily grabbed my flashlight and unholstered my pistol, my finger ready to switch off the safety. I motioned to Bear to be quiet, which was a very handy skill that he had taken time to learn. On command, he quieted, but still startled, staring at the dark hole in the cliff. I illuminated the edge of the drop-off, my gun aimed with the flashlight, and we listened. For a few minutes, all I heard was silence besides my heartbeat. Then faintly I heard it. I can't describe it, but I will try my best. It sounded like the bleat of a goat and the yowl of a wild cat coming together to form words that seemed so broken and foreign. Quiet at first, it was accompanied by the clacking and scraping sound, getting closer and closer. I strained my eyes to see the edge and the beam of light. What I saw next I'm sure has been burned into my mind's eye, and I will never forget it. In the light, long rotten fingers with thick black claws curled around the lips and proceeded to pull something up and over into the cave. The thing pulled itself to its feet. It was about 6 feet tall with long deer-like legs, 2 skin just supported, that ended in small hooves that seemed to float above the ground. The body looked semi-human, but a skeleton draped with rotting flesh, patches of mangled fur and ribs protruding from its chest. The smell was wretched and I wanted to look away and run, but I was paralyzed with fear and I kept staring at the long curled antlers, the warped and twisted body, and the long arms hanging loosely and front claws scraping the ground. But mostly, the disturbing contorted mix of human and animal intertwined to make a face so haunting. I will remember vividly on my dying day, I'm sure. But when it's locked onto my view, with its empty rotted sockets, it met my eyes and then I heard it. Quietly but all around me. The horrid how mangled words, "Let me help you." With that, I snapped out of my paralyzed state, switched the safety off, and pulled the trigger. Once, twice, 3 times in point-blank range. In an instant, the horrible thing before me flickered and was 2 feet to the right. I fired again and again, and this thing twitched and jerked toward me in a terrifying nightmare coming to consume my very being. I don't remember much of what happened next. Bear barking, us sprinting, flashes of gunfire, the jerking and clacking, the putrid breath on my neck, and the voice. Oh gosh, the evil voice. I remember the peak of sunlight, the roar of the side-by-side as me and Bear sped through the desert. We woke up, in our shack uninjured, but forever scarred by this experience. This kept me awake every night, and I needed to tell somebody. To warn somebody. Please. If you see this coloring of this thing, or see an unknown cave, please do not enter.